Run. Don't stop, Emily. Jason screamed, his flashlight flickering as he pushed through the thick wall of fog. The trees seemed to move, closing in around them like a cage made of bark and shadow. Emily's breath came in short, panicked bursts. Her jeans were torn, her arms scratched raw, and her shoes were soaked with mud that felt like it wanted to pull her underground. They had been running for hours, or maybe it was minutes. Time didn't make sense anymore inside this forest. Every direction looked the same. Every path led back to where they started. Suddenly, Emily stopped. Her light caught something ahead. It was them. 5 figures stood between the trees, motionless, their faces pale and eyes hollow. They looked human, but they weren't. Their skin shimmered slightly, like water under moonlight. One of them stepped forward and whispered, his voice dry as dead leaves. "You shouldn't have come here." Jason grabbed Emily's arm. "We just need to find the road. It's this way." But when they turned, the path behind them had changed. The trees had moved again. The way out was gone. Jason's flashlight died. Total darkness. Then came the sound. A low groan, deep and hungry, rising from beneath their feet. The ground trembled as if something alive moved underneath the soil. Emily dropped to her knees, clutching her ears as a voice, no, hundreds of voices, echoed inside her head. "You belong here now." Jason screamed her name. She turned, just in time to see his body being dragged backward into the dark, his nails clawing through dirt, his flashlight tumbling into the roots. The forest swallowed him whole. Emily was alone, but she could still hear him screaming. And then, all at once, the forest went quiet. Not even the crickets dared to sing. She took a trembling step backward, and that's when she heard it, a whisper, inches from her ear. "Don't try to leave." Everything went black. 3 days earlier, Emily Clark wasn't the kind of person who believed in ghost stories. She liked logic, order, and maps, especially maps. So when her friend Jason invited her and 2 others, Rachel and Mike, on a weekend camping trip to Ashbine Forest, she didn't hesitate. "Come on, Em," Jason had said, grinning as he packed his car. "It'll be good for you. No Wi-Fi, no work, no noise, just nature." If only she had known what kind of noise was waiting for them there. The drive from their small Ohio town took nearly 5 hours. The forest stretched for miles, untouched and eerily quiet even in daylight. The wooden sign at the entrance was half broken, the words Ashbine Forest carved deep and faded. Below it, someone had scratched a warning in red paint. "Don't stay after dark." "Creepy," Rachel had said, snapping a picture with her phone. "Maybe it's like a local joke?" "Yeah," Mike added. "Or a cheap attempt to keep kids out." Emily forced a laugh, but her stomach twisted. They hiked for an hour before finding a clearing big enough for their tents. The place was beautiful, tall pines, soft moss, and a stream running nearby. But even with the afternoon sun shining down, the shadows between the trees felt heavy. That night, around the campfire, Jason told the story he'd heard online. "They say this forest doesn't let you leave," he began, smirking as he poked the fire. "People come in and never come out. Locals think it's cursed, that the trees move when you're not looking." Rachel rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. Every forest has a story like that." But when the wind shifted, it carried with it a faint whisper. Emily froze. "Did you hear that?" she asked. Jason frowned. "What?" "Shuh," Rachel hissed. It was faint but clear, a voice, whispering from the trees. They all turned their flashlights toward the woods. Nothing moved. "Probably the wind," Mike said, forcing a laugh that didn't sound real. They tried to sleep after that, but Emily couldn't. She lay awake in her tent, listening. Every few minutes, she heard footsteps crunching outside, slow, steady, circling the camp. She thought it was Jason at first. But when she whispered his name, the steps stopped, and something breathed right outside the tent wall. The next morning, Jason was gone. His tent was zipped open. His sleeping bag was empty. His shoes were still there. No one had seen him leave. "Maybe he went to get water," Rachel said, though her voice shook. Emily nodded, but dread filled her chest. She checked the stream. No sign of him. Just the reflection of the trees swaying gently in the water. Except the trees behind her weren't moving. They waited all day. By sunset, panic set in. When Mike tried to hike back toward the car, they found themselves walking in circles. The trail markers had changed. The compass spun endlessly. By nightfall, they were back where they started, at the clearing. Rachel broke down crying. "We can't get out. We can't get out." Emily tried to stay calm, but she could feel it too. The forest was watching. That night, it started to rain. The campfire went out. The darkness was complete. And then Jason came back. He walked into the clearing, drenched and filthy, his eyes wide and unblinking. "Jason!" Emily shouted, running toward him. "Where were you?" "We were scared too." He didn't answer. He just stood there. Mud dripped from his hands. "Jason," Mike said cautiously. Jason slowly turned to face them. His lips moved, but the voice that came out wasn't his. "You shouldn't have stayed." The wind howled, and behind him, shapes began to form in the fog, dozens of pale figures stepping out from between the trees. Rachel screamed. Mike ran for the woods. And then, just like that, the forest swallowed them too. The last thing Emily saw before she ran was Jason smiling, a cold, empty smile, as the trees behind him shifted like breathing lungs. The forest was alive, and it didn't let anyone leave. Emily ran until her legs burned. Branches clawed at her face, roots grabbed her shoes, and the rain turned the ground into a slippery trap. Every direction looked the same, endless trees, endless fog. She didn't even know if she was going forward or in circles anymore. Behind her, she could still hear the whispers. They weren't shouting. They never shouted. They just whispered her name. "Emily, don't leave." The voices were close, too close. She stumbled into a small clearing, panting hard, and pressed herself against a tree trunk, trying to listen. Nothing. Only the sound of rain dripping from the leaves. For a moment, she dared to believe she had outrun them. Then she heard a twig snap. She spun around. "Jason," she whispered, her voice trembling. A shadow moved between the trees. Slowly, a figure stepped forward. It looked like Jason, but something was wrong. His head tilted at an odd angle, like his neck wasn't fully supporting it. His clothes were wet and dirty, and his eyes, they weren't eyes anymore. They were dark holes that seemed to pull the light in. "Emily," he said softly, smiling with that same lifeless grin. "Why are you running?" She took a step back. "You're not him." He tilted his head the other way, bones cracking in his neck. "I am now." Before she could move, something cold grabbed her ankle from behind. She screamed and kicked, but when she looked down, she froze. Roots. Thick, black roots had burst from the ground, coiling around her leg like snakes. They were moving, tightening. She fell backward, clawing at the dirt, trying to break free, but the roots were alive. They pulled, slowly dragging her toward the base of the nearest tree. Jason, or whatever it was, watched silently. "Please," she cried. "Don't." But the forest didn't care. The roots yanked harder, and she felt herself sliding into a hole that was opening beneath the tree. The smell of wet earth and rot filled her nose. Then, suddenly, a bright light flashed. The roots recoiled. Emily looked up to see Rachel standing there, holding a flare she'd found in the camping gear. "Get up!" Rachel screamed. Emily crawled out of the mud, gasping. Jason hissed and stepped back into the fog, his form flickering like a broken reflection in water. "Come on!" Rachel yelled. They ran again. Emily's heart was pounding so hard it hurt. The red glow from the flare threw shadows everywhere. Faces seemed to appear in the smoke, reaching out, whispering things she couldn't understand. When the flare finally burned out, the darkness returned, heavier than before. They collapsed under a massive oak tree, breathing hard. "Where's Mike?" Emily asked. Rachel shook her head, crying. "He ran. I don't know where." Emily wanted to say something comforting, but there were no words. The forest seemed to hum around them, a low vibration deep in the ground. "Rachel," Emily whispered after a while, "I think the forest is alive." Rachel nodded weakly. "And I think it wants us to stay." They tried to rest for a few minutes, but the air was too thick, too still. Not even the sound of insects. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them shifted. The tree roots began to move, slowly at first, then faster, writhing like a nest of snakes. Emily and Rachel jumped to their feet, but before they could run, the roots shot up, forming a wall around them. "Emily!" Rachel screamed, trying to squeeze through. The roots closed in tighter, curling into a dome that trapped them. The air inside grew hot, thick with the smell of sap and decay. And then a voice spoke, not in their ears, but inside their heads. "You are part of us now." Emily clutched her head. "Get out of my mind." Rachel fell to her knees, sobbing. "Please let us go." The voice laughed, a sound like wind rustling through dead leaves. "There is no leaving." Suddenly, a gap opened in the wall of roots. Something stepped through. It wasn't Jason. It wasn't human at all. It was tall, covered in bark that moved like skin. Its eyes glowed faintly green, like light seen through leaves. When it spoke, the ground shook. "We feed on what enters," it said. "And you came willingly." Emily backed away, trembling. "We didn't mean to. We just got lost." The creature tilted its head. "No one gets lost here. The forest calls those it needs." Rachel screamed as a vine wrapped around her arm, pulling her closer to the creature. Emily grabbed her hand, trying to hold on, but the vine was too strong. "Emily, don't let go." "I'm trying." But the creature stepped closer, its bark-like hand touching Rachel's face. "Be still," it whispered. Rachel went quiet. Her body relaxed, and then, before Emily's eyes, her skin began to change. It turned gray and rough, her fingers stretching into branches, her hair blending with the roots. Within seconds, Rachel was gone. In her place stood a small, twisted tree. Emily screamed, stumbling backward. "No, no." The creature looked at her with those glowing eyes. "You can't leave, Emily." She ran, not even caring where she was going. The trees moved aside for her, only to close behind, sealing the path. Her tears mixed with the rain as she pushed through the undergrowth until she saw it, a cabin. It looked old, abandoned, its roof sagging under moss and vines. But it was shelter. She ran inside, slamming the door shut behind her. Inside, the air was dry and dusty. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling. A single lantern sat on a wooden table, already lit. She froze. Someone had been here. There were drawings on the walls, hundreds of them, sketches of people, trees, and symbols she didn't recognize. In the corner lay a notebook, its pages yellowed with age. She picked it up and read. "The forest does not let you leave. It feeds on fear. It remembers every step. The trees are the lost ones. Once you are marked, you belong to it." Emily dropped the book, her hands shaking. On the final page, written in shaky letters, were 5 words that made her blood turn cold. "If you hear them whisper, run." And then she heard it again, right behind her. "Emily." She turned. Jason stood in the doorway, mud dripping from his face, eyes hollow, mouth twisted into a grin. "You came back," he said softly. "Good." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The whispers filled the cabin, rising like a storm. And outside, the forest began to move again.